If you are spending money on plugins, you are taking your money and throwing it down the trash. I'm not preaching, I'm not saying anything that you don't know. This actually just came up because of some comments I got that I should have used plugins instead of using a physical device. There's merit to those comments, but I actually want to explain why analog gear is such a better investment. We're not even talking about sonics, we're just talking about investments, durability, longevity, and fake versus real. The nature of software companies and plugin companies is to rip off poor musicians. It's not that they're evil people, it's just the nature of that business. Everything you're buying has a built-in obsolescence. I'm sure you know this, but it's egregious, right? There's no attempt to tell you that it's gonna last forever because it doesn't. So that money would have been better spent on something real that will last. If you buy plugins and software, you will lose money in the long term. If you spend your money on analog equipment and like guitars that you've properly researched and you know are good quality pieces of gear, you will make money. It's a good investment. I have never ever lost money on a piece of analog gear. It's like buying real estate. If you buy something good that you researched, even if you pay a little bit more for it, you get to use it for all the time that you have it, and then at the end, you can turn it over and typically sell it for more than what you paid for. You're not gonna do that with a piece of software, right? You're not gonna sell a piece of software in 40 years for twice what you bought it for, and you were not gonna be able to use it that whole time because your computer had to be upgraded. I used to have an Apogee Duet. I didn't love it, but it was small, it didn't need power, you could bypass the pre's on it, and it was cool. I had to upgrade that thing because it was out of date. That's complete bullshit. That's a perfect example. Even that piece of hardware, it's a digital thing that I was forced to upgrade. All that thing does is negotiate the sound of my microphone to my computer. Why the do I have to upgrade that? I saw a guy on Craigslist selling this machine, the Tascam 388, for $4,000, or he was willing to trade it for a Universal Audio Apollo. That is gotta be the worst idea I've ever heard. The Apollo's not gonna be around in 40 years. And if it is, it's not gonna sell for 4 times what you bought it for. That's just, I have a perfect example to demonstrate the superiority and the longevity of analog versus digital. Here are 2 devices. This typewriter is what, 50 or 60 years old? All I had to do was replace the spool, the ink, and it totally works, no problems. Its function is to write stuff, so it works. It does what it was intended to do decades later. This is a Mac SE. Now this thing is cool, but it's totally dead. It's gonna take so much more work to fix this thing, and it's way younger. It doesn't have any value. I mean, you can buy these things for 50 bucks. It's totally obsolete. All I could ever do with it is write stuff. So these 2 things have the exact same function at this point. They both can write stuff, only this one, I don't even know if I can get a printer to work for it. Good investment, bad investment. The only way to combat this is to mitigate your costs for software and things that have a built-in obsolescence. That's the only way to play this game. Spend as little as possible on that stuff, and instead of buying a tape plug-in emulator, maybe that money would have been better spent on an actual tape machine. I mean, you can find them for cheap on Craigslist. Now, as far as durability and longevity goes, you can take a VHS tape and throw it across the room. It will still play back. You could take a VHS tape and run over it with your car. Just take the tape out and attach it to a new VHS and it will work. That little part of the tape might be a little messed up, but it's gonna run. There is an innate durability to the way we store analog media and analog machines. They have parts that are fixable. In the digital realm, the way it's stored, it's fragile, it doesn't last. Now somebody might say, oh, ADAT tape, if you cut a piece of ADAT tape, it'll still work. In general, the durability of analog stuff is much better. It lasts forever. You can fix individual parts when they get broken. Look at this thing. This thing hasn't been used in 20 years. Pulled it out, all the tapes play, everything works. It's amazing. A 25-year-old high-8 camera. Good luck whipping out your iPhone in 25 years and getting anything to work on it. This is dope. This is dope. All the tapes from the 90s still play. Everything's been preserved. Now you might say, oh, quality is just like super lame, it's not good. Well, it actually has a bunch of features that an iPhone doesn't have. It has a zoom that is smooth the entire time. It's got this viewfinder. It's got the flippy screen. You know, you gotta have that. You can actually shoot widescreen with this thing. It's got stereo recording. The batteries are good. Oh yeah, you can plug in a modern microphone into this and it sounds great. I'm just saying, like, this thing exemplifies the idea that it's a better investment and it's got a durability to it. Now, I know there's a bunch of digital functions on it. It's kind of a hybrid, but the tapes are still good. Now you're gonna say, well, digital lasts forever. Yeah, it does last forever, but it's gotta be stored somewhere. And if you're not maintaining that wherever it's being stored, you're paying someone else to do it. And don't think that Google or somebody is gonna store it for free, because they're not. The cloud is not free. I switched to an Android phone because Google said they would store all my high quality video and photos free in the cloud. This is a business model from Uber to Google, all these companies use to get your business. They operate at a loss, drive away all the business, they're the only game in town, and then they start charging you for storing stuff. And that's what they're doing now. Google doesn't offer that anymore. They're gonna charge me for storage. And you could say that's reasonable, okay. With YouTube, I don't know that it's safe. I don't know that they're gonna store my videos forever permanently, and it's not a good idea to depend on them. And I gotta pay them forever to store my video. Here's another point that's difficult to articulate. It's wiggle room, wiggle room. What I mean is digital stuff is binary. It's either on or off. It works or it doesn't. With analog, there's wiggle room. If you have an iPod or an SD card and it gets damaged somehow, it's not gonna work. It's done. It'll never work again. If something gets damaged in analog, it is recoverable. Analog degrades over time, but the shelf life is like 100 years. With analog stuff, it's not binary, so it may degrade, but it also has a longevity that I don't really see in digital. Here's an example of wiggle room. When I was a kid, we used to get 2 or 3 channels, depending on where we turned the antenna. We had a motor that would turn the antenna on the roof to get different channels. In the winter, when there was less leaves on the trees, we could get Fox TV. It was fuzzy, but we could see Fox. When TV changed from analog to digital, that was over. You either saw the picture or you didn't. You could see it or it's like blue. There's nothing there. That's worse. That's an example of binary and wiggle room. There's no more wiggle room. While one person may see a benefit to the perfection of digital, I see it as a detriment. I see the wiggle room of analog being much better, and all the evidence is in all these tapes that I have. I got nothing but drawers here full of stuff that still work because it's analog. Got all these tapes, got cassettes, film. Look at this. Polaroids that have never been used. A real microphone, not the Slate microphone that's like hybrid digital analog so they can f me over. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, look, treasure hunting wise, you're just not gonna have this experience with digital media. This is a Super 8 camera that I found with film that I developed, which is amazing. It's like a time capsule, and the film is great quality. I'm gonna try to restore this thing, and I bet you it'll be a lot easier than trying to restore something that's digital. Now let's just talk about fake versus real. I don't wanna use a Kemper amp. I don't care if Universal Audio's compressor plugin sounds just like the real thing. It's not the real thing. If I purchase that piece of software, I'm renting it. It's not gonna last forever. I didn't actually get the physical piece of gear. The Kemper amp, I don't care if it's more convenient. The real thing is better. The real thing's always better. Think about when CGI first came out. When we watched Dreamcast back in the day, video games, we were like, it looks real. It looks like a joke right now. There could be artifacts in these things that we're not trained to hear. It might sound really fake in 10 years. The fake thing is never quite as good. I'd rather play through a real amp. There might be something in the way I place the microphone or the way that particular amp sounds that an emulation just doesn't capture. And it's also just philosophically, I'm just not as into it. It's just not as cool. It's not as fun. The physical thing is repairable, it's tangible, it is sellable. There's so many advantages to analog physical things over software. I could just talk about this all day, and I just want to be clear, I'm not preaching. All I just try to do for myself is mitigate costs for things that have a built-in obsolescence, and I try to make good investments for things that I hope will last and could do the job that software can do, but maybe better financially. By the way, the best way to get in touch with me is to just leave a comment, because sometimes people hit me up about gear and stuff like that, and through like DMs and other places, and I just don't see those. So if you want to get in touch with me or tell me that I'm stupid, you could just write a comment. And if you got value out of this video, subscribe, or if you hated it, subscribe. If you really didn't like it, just hit the like button, and thank you so much, I appreciate it. It's also like, why the f do I need to shoot in 4K? 1080 is fine. 4K, it taxes my computer. It forces me to get a new computer. I need to get a new camera to shoot in 4K. You don't need to shoot in 4K. You could leave it in 1080. That was totally fine. But the nature of the business is they want to get you